Hey everybody, it's Carm here, back with take two. Sorry about that, folks. I'm not sure what happened with the previous attempt was muted for some reason, but trying this again. So yeah, three more albums, and was remiss on showing these last time. Enya video, I had a couple CDs off to the side, but not part of the regular stack that I showed, and I meant to show these two. Storms in Africa CD single. From at the time. The Japanese edition here. And yeah, the Christmas EP, which admittedly I have not listened to since Christmas time. But of course, you know, beautiful as you would expect from Enya. And thank you everyone who watched the video, and there was, you know, needless to say, plenty of fans of hers out there. So yeah, so I'm gonna make sure I showed these because I had them right there and totally spaced on them. But yeah, so showing three more. These are all gifts. Two of them from a recent little excursion back to the shop, meeting up with Chris. He tipped me off that there was some, he brought in some new tunes, very much my thing. But this first one here was totally unexpected and a very pleasant surprise from a little while back now. Dear friend Shannon. Saw a huge Amazon box had been delivered. Couldn't remember ordering anything from them. And even when I opened it up, I was like, oh wow, this is great. But I didn't see the note right away, so should have made the connection. But it's Norah Jones, Daybreaks, 2016 on Blue Note, and pleasant surprise, and even more pleasant upon listening and subsequent listenings. I've only heard in full one other album by hers, believe it or not, after all this time. Her debut, Come Away With Me, 2002, I think that came out, and liked it very much, but for some reason just didn't pursue further, you know, in listening. Maybe just other things were at the, you know, had precedence at the time, and especially back then I was still very much into free jazz, free improv, avant-garde, as well as everything else, just like a sponge. John Fahey, all kinds of things. But yeah, it's a great album as I'm finding, to resume, you know, exploring, and of course, you know, it's a wonderful gift. This is just fantastic. There's a variety of fine players throughout. Of course, Norah herself on vocals and piano and some organ. John Patitucci on bass and a few cuts. Brian Blade on drums, plays throughout. Pete Rem, organ, who's also, Norah herself either writes or co-writes most of the songs, along with Pete Rem and Sarah Oda, neither of which I was previously familiar with. Chris Thomas on bass, Dr. Lonnie Smith on organ, and as well as strings and horns. But starting right in, you have Burn, which is this wonderful kind of late night smoky kind of torch song, very slow and kind of languid. Shannon was saying too that this is one of her favorite kind of rainy day autumnal albums, which makes me looking, you know, among many reasons to look forward to autumn. It's a sound even more fitting, but even now it's just perfect. The whole album has this kind of gentle, swaying, cozy, comforting quality in her voice. On the next cut, Tragedy, is just, even before her voice comes in, the chords are just, you feel your eyes welling up. I mean, it's so beautiful, so emotional, and it cuts right to you, you know, right away. Her voice has this, which I'm sure many of you are familiar, has this wonderful kind of both buttery and smoky quality to it, and her phrasing is just so it has this elastic quality to it, but very, just emotionally piercing. She's clearly someone who is a student of and loves all kinds of music, but doesn't merely paste on or skim off the surface. She really inhabits the song and creates it. Whatever she's singing, whether it's her originals or covers, it's so much her. And I'm hearing just all the, just throughout the years, the culmination of all this music that she's taken up. I mean, she had that on her first album to begin with, but it's so powerful here. Flipside goes into this kind of a 60s, 70s upbeat, very much like a soul, kind of soul rock, even little tinges of gospel, which changes the mood almost completely, but not in an abrupt way. It's very smooth transition, and it's a wonderful time for love. A trio, again, kind of that smoky late night club. Very languid and just a beautiful and comforting mood. Also, and then there was You, which has a wonderful string section, which has this kind of slinky, gradual quality to it. The way they just kind of creep into the song, but just perfect, very very haunting. And also, I don't know if I mentioned, Wayne Shorter plays throughout on this album on soprano sax, and I was thinking too how it's beautiful how, well, of course, Joni Mitchell is Shannon's favorite artist, and she did those wonderful portraits of her years ago. And upon hearing many of these albums for the first time myself, Wayne's place in the music on soprano, soloing, but not soloing in a typical lead way where you're taking over. It's more like punctuating and accentuating the music, and he does very much the same here. Really, like 40 years later from those early Joni albums, but it's beautiful how that ties together, Shannon's taste and what she turned us on to, and being that Wayne's kind of that central point through those years in between the artists, and he's perfect for for what Joni did and for what Nora does here, and even here late in life. He passed on about a year or so ago, but here he's still playing with great, well into his 80s. Still has that piercing directness and acute sense of context, which I think always defined him, and I'm learning defines Nora as well as Joni herself. So just gorgeous throughout. And there's also a Neil Young cover here, Don't Be Denied, which you could even hear again, that kind of swaying, kind of lazy afternoon quality to it, kind of lumbering along. Very much, my personal favorite of Neil's music has that quality, where it's more slower and more contemplative. The tone, even if whether or not the lyrics are, but it's always, she reflects that beautifully, and it just fits perfectly. Daybreaks, just gorgeous, and again, her voice, it has this exultant quality with her phrasing and just how she emotes. It's gorgeous. And on here you have a larger group with the strings and the full band. Again, the kind of haunting quality that just it's joyous as well as the tinge of melancholy. There's a Horace Silver cover piece, which reminds me I have not heard nearly enough of his music, but covers it really well here, with just a quartet with Wayne on sax, John Patitucci bass, and Brian Blade on drums. It would be neat to hear more from just that quartet alone. I don't know if there was maybe more in the archive from the time, but very lovely. Once I Had a Laugh. It's kind of a New Orleans quality to it, a little Mardi Gras, kind of a parade-like feel. But again, the mood of the album, however diverse the songs are, it's very consistent. It's so cozy and comforting and celebratory, at the same time, without there being too much of a dichotomy between moods. Sleeping Wild is a Sarah Oda original, where I wasn't familiar with, again, previously, again with strings and the full band. beautiful lilting, kind of moody quality, and as well as Carry On, Nora's original. Another one of my favorite pieces. I've heard in a few different versions. Florite Africaine, or African Flower by Duke Ellington. I think I'd first heard that. I always think of the Gary Burton Quartet from the late '60s with Larry Coryell, Steve Swallow, Bob Moses. I think it's off Lofty Fake Anagram. Very haunting piece by itself. And Nora's version here, she sings on it, but not lyrics. It's more of a kind of a, almost kind of a whispery, humming lead melody line, which really, fits the haunting quality of the song, and just timeless. And I would say that again about her music. What I'm learning of it in general, more and more. Anytime I hear it, it has a timeless quality. It's now, but it could have, whether she's covering something from 50, 60 years ago or beyond. It's just, it has this eternal quality, and yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring more. Going back and hearing what else is there. I think she has a new album out too, which I'm looking forward to checking that out. So thank you again, Shannon, for this wonderful surprise gift, and the old saying, the gift that keeps on giving. It very much is, because each listen I'm hearing little things, and yeah, it's very beautiful and compelling. So yeah, Norah Jones, Daybreaks, very much recommended. I'd say also, if you're curious about jazz and coming from a modern music perspective, or modern pop, or whatever you're into, it'd be a really nice intro. Perfect place to start, right here. And yeah. So next up, these were a couple of gifts from Chris. When I went into the shop, he had messaged me about a few CDs, or a bunch of CDs actually, that had come in that he knew that I'd be into. If I have the card here, oh, here it is. Record Wonderland. Of course, Steve, the owner, who's showing me what they had. Yeah, it was a lot of electronic CDs, electronic keyboard-based European stuff from the 80s and 90s. But the first thing was when I walked in, Chris had a stack of LPs for me that he had just been holding for me. Either things he'd had in his collection or may have bought. He thought, which of course he's done for everyone for so long. Deeply generous of spirit as always. And a few of them I had on CD, but most of them were new to me. And here's one of the new to me ones, Mad Shadows by David Collini, which this is his debut album here. Keyboards, piano, and speaking to Gary Burton before, Mike Gibbs writes the liner here, as well as some cuts that are covered of his on here. I think I have here's the liner here. I like this artwork with the collages and everything. There's David himself. Really neat thing about this album is that each piece is dedicated to someone, artists for the most part. Monica, Michael Gibbs, Patton Lyle, I think we know who that is. Peter Gabriel, Frank Zappa, Keith Jarrett, George Duke, Mike Russell. What I'm hearing personally isn't necessarily their influence. It sounds like he's assimilated their influences in such a way, but very much put his own stamp on what he's hearing in their music. What I'm hearing are maybe little things, little, almost like a tenuous connection to the artist through certain instrumental passages or maybe pacing, like on the piece 7 Up Peppermint Ice, dedicated to Patton Lyle. It's not so much the style that's theirs, but it's kind of the way they paced songs, when they wrote things together, and that sense of almost cinematic narrative without necessarily sounding like the cliche of a soundtrack. But you could hear that on here. Or Changes in Need, the Peter Gabriel dedicated piece. The drum pattern sort of sounds like what you would have heard on Security from the early 80s. I think Jerry Murata played on that. You could hear a little bit of that. Or 57th Avenue for Frank Zappa. It has that kind of quirky rhythmic quality, the kind of start-stop juddering, quality that Zappa had on a lot of his pieces, playing with time and with meter and everything. Smile You Can Fly, which I think sounds like a Chick Corea piece, or at least the title, the George Duke. That's probably maybe the closest thing to George's style that he had. Very eclectic and upbeat. And Michael Russell I wasn't familiar with, but actually, as a reference point, if you like Scott Kasu's music, played piano and keyboards, did some Windham Hill albums in the mid '80s. This is very much in that area. Kind of somewhere between, kind of a lighter fusion, but you could hear little bits of classical, little bits of rock, but very subtle the way it's all kind of blended together. Some really nice vibes and flute on here as well. So if you like those kind of instrumental colors, it's very well worth getting into. I like this cover too, with these kind of shadow figures playing, dancing. This almost looks like karate, but it's a karate dance. I don't know. But yeah, David Collini, keyboardist, debut from 1984. Recommended if you like that area of expression. And finally here, this is one I had on CD, but really nice, getting on an LP. This was, and actually thinking of Kyle from KGC Musique, this, I think this would be very much something, if he hasn't featured it, that he would feature. More obscure areas of that kind of jazz and instrumental. That's another keyboardist, Bob Thompson Brothers Keeper from 1986. And kind of in a similar vein, this one probably some ways a little more traditional, a little closer to traditional jazz in some ways, or kind of jazz pop instrumental. Yeah, Shooting Star I think is the piece I first heard from KGC Musique's channel. Has some kind of vocal embellishments, as it's kind of like the lead melody line, wordless vocals. But yeah, just a really nice groove, and another one of those albums that's very cozy overall. He's joined on here by Gerald Veasley on bass, Omar Hakim on drums, Leonard Dobbs on percussion, John Blake on violin, who had some really nice colors overall and lead melody lines. There's not enough violin in jazz when you think of in the modern sense, now Jean-Luc Ponty or Jerry Goodman, but it's nice hearing that in this context overall. There's also a nice cover of Stevie Wonder's Overjoyed, played very straightforward but very direct and very expressive, and clearly someone who loves his music. Just captures the whole tone of the song overall. So yeah, it's one I've enjoyed for quite some years. Works just as well in the background as in the foreground. Hearing little things and interactions between the players. I don't know if I mentioned Kevin Eubanks is also on guitar, electric and acoustic guitar, and you hear all he's someone who of course plays in so many different styles, and he does it really nicely on here. Yeah, just someone else, a player for all seasons, as they say. But, yeah, again, if you like keyboard-based instrumental of the time, another one's very much recommended. And yeah, again, another one of those things I learned through KGC Musique that just keeps adding up. Beautiful stuff. So yeah, want to make sure I did this or redid this, but yeah. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Shannon, very much for this gift, and of course Steve from the shop. And yeah, at some point soon I'll because I've been going through those CDs too. There's a bunch of them, as well as more LPs. and yeah, weave them into future videos, maybe more profiles of artists, some concentrated on certain specific areas of the music, and I'll look forward to sharing those soon. So thank you all for watching and bearing with us again, and yeah, hope you're all well, and till the next one. Peace, love, and joy.